What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and once again I'd love to be showcasing the Hisuian Zorua line in the Hisui cut, but these Pokemon are still banned and it's just super frustrating because when I've got an idea in my head for a video, I'm going to go to extreme lengths to make sure I get that video done, even if it means grinding out hundreds of XL candies in a single day just to obtain an obscure level 50 Pokemon. I'm going to try my absolute best to get it done, and after the effort I went through to get these new Pokemon built, not being able to use them because Niantic or Scopely can't code their game properly is just a complete piss take, and excuse my French there, but yeah, it's just really killed my motivation to play the game right now. Every few hours I'm opening the game to try and enter the Go Battle League to see if they're eligible yet, and every single time I close the game in frustration as I still can't use them. And just to add to my negative experience for this game recently, since I've not been able to use these Pokemon in the Go Battle League, I figured I might as well go out to a Kobe nest and take advantage of that quadruple Stardust during this event. So I cycled just over 30 minutes away to a confirmed Kobe nest, and just as I was pulling up, I activated my star pieces, my incenses, spatial rend for over an hour, only to have no signal anywhere in the park, and I completely wasted all of those items as I spent pretty much a full hour walking around the park trying to log back into the game with no success. It's also ridiculously hot in the UK right now, which is why I'm not wearing a shirt, but you can't really see too much anyways. But yeah, it was not the most pleasant bike ride, and it was completely pointless anyways, as I wasn't able to catch a single Pokemon whilst I was there. Now I know this has nothing to do with the game itself, and it's more of an issue with my network provider, but here's only added to my frustrations with the game at the moment, so don't be surprised if there's no video tomorrow if I'm still unable to use the Zorua line, as I honestly just do not want to play the game right now. But anyways, into this video, these are just 3 completely random Pokemon that I've not really seen anyone else using. There's no real theme. Wormadam got a buff at least this season with Bug Bite, and it's got a very unique typing, so that is at least something. But yeah, very little thought went into the team, and that's mostly because my head is just elsewhere. But with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Which Pokemon with a relatively unique dual typing has completely bamboozled either yourself or your opponents due to its unique type combination? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle in Shadow Electivire into Gastrodon. So of course, pretty much the worst thing we can see with the Electivire in the lead. I'm going to say swap into Drifloon, and this is my first battle with this team, and I'll be honest, I hadn't really thought about Water Pulse as a coverage move for the Gastrodon, as, you know, obviously they don't typically run Water Pulse, but for this meta I think it is better to run Water Pulse in case you go up against something like a Drifloon or a Drifblim more likely, as of course the Earth Power and the Body Slam are both resisted. But anyways, we grab a shield from the Shadow Palkia. We're going to come in with our Shadow Electivire, of course, still going to shield this even though I just debuffed their attack as we're taking huge damage from the Dragon Breaths, but I'm going to go ahead and fire off the Ice Punch. Ice Punch gets the KO there. We swap instantly into the Wormadam, and unfortunately they do have enough energy for a second Water Pulse, so I shield that up there, use my final shield. They've got Frostlass in the back, and my only win condition is grabbing the final shield with a Bulldoze, and we do exactly that. And not only that, they don't even overfarm, so at this point Avalanche gets the KO, but Shadow Electivire just barely hanging on, reaching the Wild Charge, and of course Wild Charge gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle. We're going to see Gastrodon in the lead, and I'll be honest, I saw Gastrodon in the lead in like 50% of my battles. It was kind of outrageous, but it is the most common Pokemon I've seen in this meta. Pretty much every single team has a Gastrodon and either a Drapion or some sort of Drapion-esque Pokemon like this Quillfish here. At this point, I'm actually just going to overfarm. I didn't throw a Charge Move there just because I realized the opponent will just be able to commit to a full farm down. I'd rather they just throw their energy there, as an Icy Wind not going to get the KO anyways. The opponent fires off a debuffed Aquatail. The opponent is eventually going to swap back into Gastrodon, so now it's time to come back in with the Wormadam, and this time the opponent is going to go ahead and fire off the Body Slam. Of course, Body Slam not going to do too much damage here, however, it is going to start adding up over time. We've got 2 shields, I might as well use one of them here. We're now going to overfarm massively, and I'm going to throw a Bug Buzz just before they reach the next Body Slam. Bug Buzz gets the KO there. I don't think Bulldoze would have quite done enough damage there, but at this point I'm going to use my final shield. I recognize Electivire has so much energy, and its energy is going to be useful into pretty much anything, so Bulldoze gets the KO there. They come in with an Overquill, so at this point I'm just going to force them to throw the energy straight away, and Electivire, I believe, is 2 away from back-to-back Wild Charges. We farm there, and we get there before the opponent reaches an Aquatail. First Wild Charge, grabs the final shield, and of course a second Wild Charge up against Overquill, gets that one shot, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to open there into the next battle. We're going to see Electivire into Licky. So, of course, this is going to be a fairly neutral matchup here. The opponent's going to swap into Gastrodon, and we can respond with the Drifloon, and we can hard punish them. Again, not really expecting Water Pulse here, and the opponent is not on Water Pulse. They go for the Earth Power. It is also worth noting, I started these battles in like the mid-1900 elo range, so don't expect the highest level of gameplay from my opponents here, but some of them do still make some very, very nice plays. But anyways, they fire off a second Earth Power. Of course, if they're on Earth Power and Body Slam, then Earth Power is the right move to go for anyways, but we're going to come out with a ton of energy. We fire off the Icy Wind. I swap back into my Shadow Electivire here, and I actually shield this up. I'm not really sure why I shielded there, just because I wasn't expecting an Earthquake, so the opponent is going to be able to reach a last second charge move, and because I've now debuffed my defense, Body Slam does not quite get the KO though, somehow. I guess we did debuff them with the Icy Wind first, but as a result, we reach a last second charge move, and I did panic slightly there. I could have gone for the Wild Charge. It does not matter, as the opponent does end up shielding anyways. They're going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Dusknoir. At this point, I realize they're going to be thrown away from the next move, so I swap. I catch the move onto my Drifloon. I couldn't really remember how much energy I had here, so obviously I could have reached an Icy Wind most likely, but instead we're going to fire off the Bug Buzz. Bug Buzz even resisted. It gets the KO there. They come back in with the Licky, and they can only go for Body Slam here. Body Slam, not enough damage to get the KO, and I will be able to reach a Bug Buzz before they reach another Body Slam, and of course, Bug Buzz gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to open there into the next battle. We're going to see a Mamoswine in the lead. So, of course, this is not ideal for me, but they are on Powder Snow, so at least they're not got, like, crazy fast move pressure against me. I'm going to go ahead and fire off the Ice Punch. And, of course, my backline is going to be double weak to Ice, plus I'm hitting for double resistant damage with the Thunder Shocks. Really not an ideal combination, but we swap out at the same time as the opponent. And, unfortunately, the opponent swaps into a Spiritomb. So, of course, better to swap into our Wormadam here than into our Drifloon, just because they're going to hit for super effective damage with the fast moves, but they fire off the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb does not get the KO, as it's only neutral up against the Bug and ground typing. However, what it does do is allow them the perfect farm down. But Drifloon comes in. We get that Hex Snipe before they reach another Rock Tomb, but they've got a Shadow Sneasler in the back, and unfortunately, things aren't looking too good for me. I go for the Icy Wind. We grab a shield there. They come back in with the Mamoswine. I cannot commit to a farm down here. Thunder Shocks, as I mentioned, double resisted. I'm forced to throw the Ice Punch there. We do reach a last second Ice Punch, but the opponent very smart, just committing to a full Shadow Claw farm down, and they will come out with pretty much back-to-back charge moves. My only win condition is if they've got X-Scissor and Close Combat, and even then, they probably Shadow Claw farm me down anyways, but they had Aerial Ace, so regardless, they get the KO there, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. I'm going to see Drapion in the lead, and I am full sending the Wild Charge. Wild Charge is not respected. The opponent expecting a bait there, and as a result, we get the one shot. Now we're going to swap into Drifloon. I'm going to go for an Icy Wind bait here. Icy Wind is going to grab a shield from the opponent, and this time I am committing to the Shadow Ball. Now we throw on CMP, we lose CMP here. I'm actually going to shield this as they do fire off a Shadow Punch, but that's okay. I can guarantee the final shield from the opponent, but they will now be able to fully astonish farm me down. I come back in with the Shadow Electivire. Of course, I know they've got a Gastrodon here. However, I'm going to shield this up just because the opponent might swap back into Gastrodon. They do exactly that. We can now come in with the Wormadam, and the opponent is once again going to go for an Earth Power there. Probably just completely thrown off by this dual typing, as of course, Bug does resist the ground typing, but it's not that usual for ground type Pokemon to be resisting other ground types. But either way, we fire off the Bug Buzz here. Bug Buzz gets the KO, and as long as I don't get one turn, bring in lag on my Electivire, we've got the Wild Charge loaded. We can throw it straight away into the Dusknoir. Wild Charge gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent. And by the way, if you watched yesterday's video where I shoutcasted Jamie Finn's battles, a lot of the times he was actually coming out of the app and then coming back in. Apparently, that is to prevent one-turn lag. However, I actually very rarely experience one-turn lag. So, for me personally, I don't have the need to do it. But if you are sort of finding yourself in lots of battles where you're losing because you are just lagging one turn as you bring in your final Pokemon, definitely try that out there. Apparently, it might have been patched, but either way, still worth worth a try anyways. But either way, into this battle, and the opponent's going to swap back into Gastrodon. So at this point, we're going to fire off the Ice Punch. I'm then going to swap into my Wormadam here. And at this point, I probably have to just no-shield. If they have Water Pulse, then it's going to do a lot of damage. But they go for the Earth Power again. I don't really understand it. But at this point, we are going to just no-shield this, as the opponent will be firing off a Body Slam here. We can go for the Bug Bite Farm Down. And let's see. The opponent's going to come in with a Licky. So I'm going straight for the Bug Buzz here. I'm not baiting. Bug Buzz does big damage, and it drops their defense, and we can reach a Bulldoze. And this Bulldoze now probably threatens a shield, and one away from an Ice Punch, so I'm able to snipe with the Electivire, throw that Ice Punch, knock out the Licky, and now, of course, we just have to shield this Charge Leaf here. I've now gained the energy for the Wild Charge, so I shield up the Avalanche, we fire off that Wild Charge immediately, and of course, up against the Frost Sass, Wild Charge gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there. Into next battle, we're going to see a Shadow Drapion in the lead. So, once again, I'm going to stay in this matchup here. If they fire off the Alcatel straight away, then, of course, they will outpace me. But we're going to go ahead, fire off the Wild Charge. We grab the shield there. I then swap into my Wormadam. And at this point, I probably just barely live 2 Aquatails. However, you're going to see it's going to be incredibly close here. I'm hoping I can no-shield this and reach a Bulldoze before they farm me down. But that is not the case. We faint as we get to the Charge Reef there. So just fully sacrificing the Wormadam. We're going to come back in with the Shadow Electivire. And of course, I'm going to have to start shielding. The opponent is going to go for an Aquatail bait. They then swap into Gastrodon though. And that is definitely fine with me. We can come in with the Drifloon. And again, they could go for Water Pulse here. However, get an O-Shield. And again, they just go for Earth Power. So we're going to farm up to 100 energy. Fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball gonna do big damage. They will reach a last second Body Slam, or actually possibly even another Earth Power. However, it doesn't really matter. It is still double resisted. But they've got Big Barrel in the back, and that is the hardest answer to Drifloon or Drifloon, as they will resist everything we can possibly throw. So at this point, this game is not over. I'm going to shield here. The opponent probably going to swap back into their Shadow Drapion, and they do exactly that. So we go for the Ice Punch. Ice Punch is going to be no-shielded, but they come back in with the barrel. I can fire off another Ice Punch here. I need to get off as much fast food pressure as possible, but I'm just not able to do so. They farm me down. We do reach the Icy Wind, but it's resisted damage. It's non-stab. It's also a 1300 CP Drifloon, and as a result, they tank it comfortably. They get to the Surf, and Surf takes out the Drifloon, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into next battle, you can see Lucario, and they are on Force Palm. So, of course, dealing a lot of fast food pressure. I'm going to bait with the Ice Punch, pretty much guaranteed to grab a shield. Then I swap into Drifloon, and the opponent comes in with a Togekiss. So I'm going to go straight for Icy Wind here. I believe Togekiss is the only Fairy-type Pokemon available in this meta. So at this point, we're going to fire off back-to-back Icy Winds here. This second one will get the KO if they do not shield, which they don't. But they can now come in with a Licky and commit to a very aggressive rollout farm down. The charge moves might be resisted here if they've got Body Slam and Earthquake. So the opponent committing to that farm down. We do reach a second Icy Wind here. Icy Wind going to double debuff their attack. And at this point, I think I'm just going to come back in with the Electivire, force the opponent to throw some energy. And of course, we've still got 2 shields for the Wormadam. They fire off the Body Slam, and now they're going to fire off another charge move, but they have not cleared their debuff yet. And again, they go for the Ground-type move into our Bug-type Pokemon, which we're absolutely fine with. The opponent now recognizing they need to go for Body Slams. However, they have still not cleared their debuff. So again, I'm just going to no-shield. I recognize Lucario, possibly if they do have access to Shadow Ball, is going to be the hardest hitting Pokemon left, so we might as well save both the shields here. They do go for Power Up Punch, but it doesn't really matter at this point. We can fire off the Bulldoze. They are, of course, double resisting the Bug Bite damage, but Bulldoze going to hit for super effective damage. We also drop their defense there. They can boost up their attack once again with the Power Up Punch, but we do reach a last second Bulldoze, and of course, Bulldoze gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. Shadow Electivire once again into a Gastrodon. So, once again, going to swap into our Drifloon here. And the opponent's going to respond with a Drapion. Now, they actually don't farm up to the crunch here. Maybe want to get off a charge move before I debuff them. However, that makes my life a lot easier as I can just safely no-shield that. Fire off the Icy Wind. Icy Wind doesn't do too much damage, but we do reach a second Icy Wind before they do even reach a potential crunch. At this point, they've got the energy for the crunch, so I think I will shield this, but they bait with another Aqua Tail. So this is definitely going to be a third Aqua Tail. I don't know if maybe they're on Aqua Tail and Sludge Bomb as their charge moves, but either way, I'm definitely not going to complain here. Gonna fire off another Icy Wind, get them fairly low. They swap back into a Torterra. What on earth is this thing doing here? We go for the Icy Wind, grab the final shield. I'm now swapping into Electivire. Gonna overfarm as much as I can. Throw an Ice Punch on the CMP tie here. Winning CMP. Ice Punch, obviously double super effective. Gets the KO, and I'm actually able to reach a last second Wild Charge. And despite the fact that Ice Punch is neutral and Wild Charge is resisted, Wild Charge still does a lot more damage there. And at this point, of course, we can come in with the Wormadam. I am going to no-shield this as the opponent is going to once again go for the Earth Power. I think, honestly, this Wormadam just completely bamboozled so many opponents there. Again, I will say I am playing in like the low 1900s to 2000 ELO range, so obviously not the highest level of gameplay on the opponent's end, but still, most of them going for the Earth Power there up against the Wormadam when it's resisted. But into the next battle, GG's to our trainer, by the way, and once again, another Gastrodon in the lead. We just cannot buy a good lead with Shadow Electivire right now, but even worse, we're met with a Big Barrel, like I mentioned, the hardest counter to Drifloon in this meta. We go for another Icy Wind here. We will reach another Icy Wind. The opponent, not wanting to be triple debuffed here, is actually going to expend some energy as they fire off the Surf. We can come back in with the Electivire, and at this point, I'm definitely going to have to no-shield this. Of course, even though double debuffed, that Hyper Fang still does huge damage. We do get a full farm down here, but unfortunately, I'm not going to live a single Mud Slap, so if I throw energy, they will just farm me down, and I will not be able to reach back-to-back charge moves. Again, they go for Earth Power there, but I actually shield that up there just in case they were on Water Pulse. And I should have recognized my win condition was the opponent not having Water Pulse anyways, as they've got a Ghost-type Pokemon in the back. And unfortunately, they will outpace me to back-to-back charge move just barely. You can see we've now got the energy for the Bulldoze, but Shadow Punch gets the KO there. I can farm up to back-to-back Wild Charges. It doesn't make a difference. First of all, they've got a shield anyways. But secondly, Wild Charge will not get the KO here, so I fully undercharge it. The opponent can just Mud Slap, farm me down. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle, and finally a non-Gastrodon lead. The opponent's going to Safe Swap into a Bomber Snow, which is quite a tricky Pokemon to deal with for this team. Once again, of course, we are going to be double weak to the Ice typing in the back, and then we've got Electivire, which is for resisted damage with the fast moves. We're going to swap into Wormadam, hoping I could Bug Bite farm them down, but unfortunately, I'm not able to do so before they do reach a Weather Ball, and of course, Weather Ball is going to hit for super effective damage. But they come back in with the Drapion. I can fire off a Bulldoze here. Bulldoze, not the hardest hitting move, but it does grab a shield, and it also drops their defense. So that's why I'm going to no-shield. I can tank an Aqua Tail relatively comfortably here. The opponent going to have to fire off another charge move to take us out. But at this point, I'm actually going to shield this, and the opponent is going to eventually swap into Gastrodon, so I bank a ton of energy. We swap into Drifloon. All shields are down, and the opponent is going to fire off a Body Slam. So at this point, we are going to just continue to overfarm here. I don't need to throw straight away. Again, they do not farm up to the Water Pulse. We can farm up to 100 energy, fire off the Shadow Ball here. Shadow Ball going to do big damage. They will reach another charge move, but it doesn't matter. I'm still going to come out of this matchup incredibly healthy, and we're very close to 100 energy. So we're going to fire off an Icy Wind straight away. Icy Wind, going to grab the final shield. We're one Hex away from a second Icy Wind into Drapion, and there's just nothing they can do here. They're going to try and overfarm as much as possible. Crunch, probably even double debuffed, will get the KO here, but it doesn't really matter. We've got to move on the Wormadam, but just to play it safe, we come in with Electivire, we Thunder Shock, farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG stop on there into the next battle. We're going to see a Drifblim in the lead. The opponent's going to Safe Swap into Drapion. I'm going straight for Wild Charge. Wild Charge is not respected. They come in with Bastiodon. We're coming in with the Wormadam. And the opponent is actually going to concede the match there as I reach the Bulldoze. That is not something you see every day. A Bastiodon rage quitting up against a Bug-type Pokemon. That is very cool to see. But anyways, GG's to the up trainer there, of course. Kind of hard counted in the lead and then just fully sacrificing that Drapion, expecting a bait. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Frostlass here. And at this point, this is actually not that bad for me. We are going to shield the first move. I'm going to bait here. I do actually realize towards the end of this matchup, in the 2-shield scenario, if I want to guarantee switch advantage, I can actually just go straight Icy Wind in this matchup. These hexes will add up over time, and because I'm debuffing their attack, their Powder Snows, they don't really add up that much. But at this point here, we are going to overfarm. The opponent didn't throw on the best timing, so we actually go for 3 hexes, fire off the Icy Wind, it gets the KO from that range, and they come in with a Shadow Drapion. However, I make a pretty significant mistake here. We go for the Icy Wind, but I'm not going to reach another Icy Wind here. I thought I would get there in time, but I give them a huge farm down. We're coming in with the Shadow Electivire. I'm just going to force them to throw back-to-back charges straight away. Crunch still does huge damage there, but it does force them at least to throw another charge move. Aqua Tail gets the KO there. We come in with the Wormadam, and whilst this is a positive matchup for me, if they don't have Water Pulse, we're still not really dealing that much damage here. What I probably should have done is fired off a Bulldoze, hoped for a defense drop, and then of course come out with another Bulldoze loaded. Whereas instead, what I'm going to do is farm up and throw a Bug Buzz when I do reach 100 energy. However, the opponent is going to be 1 Poison Sting away from the next charge move, and as a result, we end up losing CMP. Aqua Tail takes out the Wormadam, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into next battle. You can see Licky in the lead once again. So once again, going to stay in this matchup here. If they fire off that Body Slam straight away, Electivire, very glassy, but we can tank a Body Slam there, so I will. We're now going to fire off a Wild Charge, and Wild Charge is going to do big damage in this matchup. It grabs the shield there. The opponent trying to throw on good timing or commit to a full farm down, but as a result, they allow me to reach another Wild Charge, but it barely does not get the KO. So Electivire, just going to let it go down here. We grabbed a shield advantage. We're going to come in with the Drifloon, and the opponent's going to have their own Ghost-type Pokemon in Dusknoir. Now, I could have chosen to throw on CMP there, but of course, losing CMP, not really the ideal play for me. So instead, going to shield there, fire off the Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball grabs the final shield. So now I'm going to swap into my Wormadam. Wormadam is a fairly bulky Pokemon here, so I'm going to no-shield this as they fire off a Shadow Punch. And now from this range, I'm hoping Bulldoze gets the KO. It will be fairly close here. Bulldoze barely does not take them out. They've actually just banked a charge move, which I do have to be very wary of in the end game here. So what we're going to do, and by the way, Dusknoir probably wins CMP up against both my Pokemon in the back. So what I really need to do here is make sure I've still got both Pokemon alive. So what we're going to do is catch the Body Slam onto the Drifloon here. Of course, Body Slam, double assist. We tank that. We get the Hex Farm down, and as a result, the opponent forced to throw their energy. The opponent goes for the Shadow Punch, but now we can come in, one Bug Bite, gets the farm down with the Wormadam, and I'm able to take that game. So GG's up on there into the final battle of this video, leading into a Drapion here. So we are going to stay in once again. I'm going to full send the Wild Charge if they didn't swap into Gastrodon. But of course, since they do swap, we're going to come in with the Drifloon. At this point, we have been hit a few times by Water Pulse, so I'm actually going to debuff their attack first before they even throw anything. This way, it just guarantees a very comfortable matchup. But again, they're not even on Water Pulse here. So now I'm just going to continue to overfarm. Going to farm up to 100 energy. I can just settle for another Icy Wind here. They actually go for the Body Slam there, which is going to do even less damage. Icy Wind grabs a shield from the opponent. They then swap back into Drapion here. So what I don't really want to do is swap into my Electivire, as I feel like this is a ploy to try and get the Electivire back in. Whereas I can actually just stay in with my Drifloon here. If I just continuously debuff their attack, and if the opponent does not farm up to a potential crunch, then I can just maintain alignment anyways, as we can go for another Icy Wind here. Icy Wind is going to, of course, drop their attack once again, and I will reach another Icy Wind before the opponent can fully farm me down. Icy Wind gets them incredibly low. They're forced to swap back into the Gastrodon, and now I do bank a tiny slither of HP on my Drifloon. We come in with Wormadam. Again, they go for the Earth Power up against the Wormadam. We get the Bug Bite farm down there. They've got Hisuian Electrode in the back, and we're able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.